like to talk about music in general, like I do, like just the history of anything, that history of music, period. Like it's fascinating to me. It's fascinating. Like even just for example, like I don't know, like what happened at all the hair bands, like right in 1991, where the media was like, we don't want this anymore.
Yeah, and it just like went out like a wet match.
Yeah, and you were like, what? Were you even born then?
I was born in 91. Yeah.
Okay, so you were a baby.
Yeah, I wasn't taking in all the music that was going on in the world at that time.
I was in high school, so you have so by the time you were 10 years old, that was like ancient history.
Yeah,
but like I saw it, but I mean, there's so many things that led up to that. It wasn't just MTV saying like, "Oh, we're not going to do this anymore." But
yeah, I'm sure that was a big part of it, because at that point,
it was huge.
MTV was still really pushing for like being entirely a music TV channel.
I mean, remember, and you'll remember when you were real young, like MTV still was the be-all, end-all. So,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, up until like the mid-2000s, I guess, when they kind of shifted their perspective to more like reality shows and crap like that. It kind of, and then at that point, it was funny. I just found, it was a really funny Facebook post I shared like a week or two ago, and it had like this picture of like this super like futuristic utopia with like flying cars and all this stuff, and it's the world MTV just kept playing music.
yeah, the flying cars and stuff. We could talk about a little bit about like how your kids are going to react to this. Like you teach a lot of young kids, and one thing I want to mention to you that before I forget, because I was thinking about this the other night, if I also taught private drum lessons when I was younger in my 20s, and one of the best feelings in the world, and you know this, is when you see one of your kids grow up to be an adult and become something because of what you taught them. I was thinking about one of my students, George. I taught him when he was really young. The kid's way better than me. I mean, he's a way better drummer than me now. And
that's the goal when you're teaching.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's the kid better than the teacher.
He came to me like when Limp Bizkit was like the biggest thing in the world. Like that's all he knew was like Limp Bizkit was like. Now that drummer is really good. The drummer from Limp Bizkit, he's not a slouch. None of those guys in that band are slouches except for Fred Durst.
Except for Fred Durst.
I mean, they're good musicians. Anyway, I don't want to get off topic about that, but what I was going to say is George came to me just knowing like pretty much bands like that, because that was popular at the time. And as soon as I introduced him to Dream Theater and Rush, he looked at music like that like it was a puzzle to solve. Like prog metal was like really hard. It's not easy stuff to learn, but it was like a puzzle to him. It was something to be solved, and
something
that's how
we figured out on the first listen. Something like, what? How do I even count this?
Yeah. But
that's
so
it's challenging.
He kind of left Limp Bizkit behind, and he adopted like Rush and Dream Theater in Kansas and all these prog bands. And now he runs his own recording studio in New Jersey. He's been on tour with Seven Dust. They're called Architect Music is the place he runs. Little plug for Architect Music. George is a fantastic player, but he's just one of probably a handful of kids that I taught that became way better than me, And so, I mean, teaching, and not just teaching them, but like talking to them about music and getting them to love music as much as we do. That's like the best feeling in the world.
Mm-hmm.
First thing first, like that's what you do for a living. You teach music. You are music, basically, and I did that for a while. I still play in a band. I play pop music on the weekend.
You're every much the musician that you were back then, I'm sure, if not more.
Way better now. Yeah. I still do learn stuff, and I still try to play some like Fate's Warning once in a while to keep my chops up.
Oh, there you go.
Well, Mark Zonder is just an amazing drummer. The rest of that band's amazing too. I do like a lot of prog metal, but there's only so much I could take.
See, I'm the opposite. For me, there's only so much I can do getting out of prog metal before I'm like, I want to go back to Dream Theater. I want to go back to Sons of Apollo.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I want to go back to something that's gonna like make me question what way is up and down.
Right, because like sometimes you're listening and you're like, okay, let's take like Black Sabbath with Dio, for instance.
Yeah.
You know where those songs are going to go pretty much. They'll have their verse, chorus, and then they may have like a a different part at the end, and that's it. You know, and so after you listen to that for a while, you're like, okay, now I need something a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, it's not so much that it's Sabbath with Dio. It's basically Dio with Tony Iommi.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
It's sculpted in very much the same vein of all Dio solo stuff, which I love because I'm a big Dio fan. I could listen to nothing but Dio for hours and never get tired of it, even if all the songs are structured the same, because of not so much the lyrical content, which I really enjoy, but also just because the sheer nature of just Dio's voice. I really like the way he sounds.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I love his voice. I love his range. I love what he does with his voice, and you know, just how he expresses himself through the genre. He's my favorite metal singer, probably of all time.
Oh, well, I mean, there's not much better than him. I mean, all around. And he's been doing it. He was doing it from like there's the early '60s.
Yeah, it's funny how many like of the older Hazelton hats know Dio. And I when I first got into all that stuff, and I was like in high school growing up and like researching all this older '80s and '70s metal and getting into all this different stuff. And and then
the Electric Elves, it was called. They were called the Electric Elves. They played at St. Joe's Gym.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah, the cousin Ernie will tell you about that. I'm sure your mom will tell you about that too.
Yeah, it was like right around that age. Generation, they all know who he is, and I'm thinking these guys all know this like crazy like metal guy. Like really?
Wow. Well, you know what though? In the '70s and early '80s, the Poconos was a huge thing to do. Like the Poconos circuit, you know, was not like it is now. You know, so Dio has like there's a little bit of connection.
Yeah, which I had no idea because I was born after that died. You know, like I have no idea. Like if I'm sitting here thinking Hazelton is all like these, you know, these old-fashioned Italians and Polacks that just don't. No one gives a shit what metal is. You know. Yeah.
Well, Ronnie was an old-fashioned Italian, though.
He was, and that's one of the reasons I love him as much as I do too. You know, we share that same culture and upbringing too.
Yeah.
It's funny because that's even like that's an Italian thing.
Are you familiar with his like last couple albums he did? Because he got really into like doing like stuff that sounded real doomy, real like mid-tempo prodding kind of stuff.
Yeah, like let me take a look. Let me pull up his discography here. So
Master of the Moon was one of them.
Oh yeah,
Killing the Dragon.
I love Killing the Dragon.
That's a great album.
My favorite Dio song is on that album. It's called Guilty. Yeah, and it's just got this like, real sludgy, heavy guitar riff. He got really into that. And the last thing he did with Sabbath, well, they're called Heaven and Hell then, that last album they put out, like I saw them on that tour, which was amazing. That last album they put out, everything is real, it's like mid-tempo and sludgy, almost like a doom metal record. Yeah, and see, for me, like, Killing the Dragon was one of the earlier Dio albums I got. When I first got into him. So like by the time I got into him as an artist, a lot of that stuff was already out. So I was
go backwards.
Yeah, I did. I literally like I listened to his earlier solo record stuff later than I listened to the later stuff. Not that I went in any particular order.
What about Rainbow?
I only have a little bit of Rainbow, but I mean what I have I really like.
Well, the Dio albums are good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The other ones are okay, but they're very commercial. Like the one that has Street of Dreams on it, that's it totally sounds different. Like I mean, like Long Live Rock and Roll, Rainbow Rising, Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, all the ones with Dio, they're very much in that Dio vein.
I love that like this whole thing is like such a freeform in nature because we can totally go on these different tangents. You know, we can.
Well, how about this tangent? Have you seen the? I might post a guy once in a while. The guy that sings like Bruce Dickinson.
Oh yeah, I love that guy.
Videos. He's like from Brazil or something.
Yeah.
He sounds so much like Bruce.
He sounds exactly like him.
It's amazing.
It's disgusting, and I hate him.
I know.
I'm jealous. I wish I could do that.
Yeah, if I could sing like that, I would do it all the time. But yeah, now he's doing like, what if Bruce Dickinson sang for this band? He just did the Friends theme the other day. The theme from Friends as Bruce Dickinson. It was fantastic.
I'm sure he crushes it.
Yeah, you got to look it up. It's really good. And you know, the guys he has with them are good players too, because they're doing Maiden covers, and that's as far as I know, they're like note for note.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's also speaking of really good like singer impersonators. There's another guy, I forget his name, but he does like a whole bunch of vocal stuff on YouTube, and he'll he does like a lot of like genre crossing different stuff, you know, like impersonating different singers, and like I'm gonna sing this song in like 10 different styles and like that kind of thing.
Oh, are you talking about the 10 different styles guy with the long curly black hair?
Yeah. That's
I can't remember his name. He was in the Motley Crue movie.
yeah,
he's great.
Yeah,
he played John Corabi in the Motley Crue movie. But yeah, he's amazing.
And like it's funny because whenever I teach singing, I always say like it all comes down to like knowing the anatomy of the instrument. Because if you know how to manipulate the 5 or 6 different chambers of your larynx, you can literally sound like anything. You know, like a lot of like, oh, I can never sound like Eddie Vedder, or I can never sound like David Draymond, or, you know, like, I always get students that want to sing particular stuff, and like, you know, they always put that barrier, like, oh, I don't have his voice, so I can't sound like that. It's like, dude, yes, you can, as long as, I mean, I can't do it. I don't have that level of vocal control that I can just like pop different genres and impersonate singers and sound exactly like people. But
yeah, but the right guy,
it's possible. And
yeah, it is possible. And I've heard that before from like singers that are classically trained, you know, and really know their craft. They're saying like, oh no, to an extent, you couldn't sound like anybody because of what you were just saying. Yeah. I can't do it, you know.
You're saying, I mean, I'm pretty limited in what I can do because I was really strongly classically trained. So like, there are so many things that I'll just not be able to do if I sing rock because of all of my classical training.
Well, unless you sing power metal.
Yeah, exactly. I love power metal, because there's really such a fine line between the singing technique used for that, because all of those guys are classically trained singers too. Most of them even sideline opera, you know.
Sing Matchbox 20 like that.
Now you give it to one of those YouTube guys, and they would make a really good arrangement, and it would sound awesome.
Yeah, that 10 Styles guy, he's amazing.
Absolutely.
There's another guy who does. He does What If Bruce Dickinson Sang for Metallica. He's another guy.
Oh, is that a different guy? I thought it was the same guy.
Yeah, he's a different guy.
Oh,
he sings like Metallica songs with Bruce. He kind of sounds like Bruce. And then he does like Hetfield singing Maiden songs.
Okay.
He does a really good Hetfield. I got 3 gig requests today to play gigs 3 times today. That's usually an average now. About three or 4 a day, I get like maybe like three, 4 times a week. I'll get people asking, "Hey, come play our party," and I have to say like, no, I'm not going to be.
And that sucks. You don't want to say no. Of course, you want to go play.
Oh, did we lose a lot of money?
I can only imagine.
Oh boy, yeah. I mean, we were scheduled all out. We had like 3 or 4 openings in the beginning of 2020. Beginning of 2020, the band had maybe 4 or 5 openings for the entire year. Open dates, and we lost
everything after March. Yeah, you probably had 30 or 40 shows, and then that was it.
And it just, you know, whatever it is, and I won't get political on here or anything, but if you're not comfortable playing, don't play. That's the whole thing, and that's what we all talked about after we did that gig in the park a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And even at the wedding, we were socially distant, which was, you know, fine. But playing in a bar right now, nah, it's not worth it. And they don't pay, you know. So, and all our big paying gigs, they all got rescheduled. So that wasn't too bad. But I feel for the bands that need to be on tour, that need to make money.
Yeah, or that's their primary source of income, not secondary.
Yeah, I mean, like Metallica's fine. You know,
but like they're sitting on fortunes. At this point, they're just playing for fun. They don't need to get any more money.
Right. But like other bands, like, you know, that aren't at that level, they're dying. You know, and I mean, we're musicians. We don't save money. We spend it on new gear.
Right.
So I'm sure a lot of these bands, you know,
you invest every cent you have.
Yeah, you know, a lot of those bands, like, you know, bands probably that you're into and I'm into, you know, or even more so, like your brothers are into. Those bands, they're not making millions of dollars on tour to begin with. They're probably making
a lot of them,
a decent living.
Yeah,
but
enough to pay their bills, but probably not much.
But
more.
Now what? You know?
Yeah.
What they, you know, the recording industry went down the shitter a long time ago, so they have to make their money with live performances.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can't even do that. So I feel for them. I really do.
Me too. Yeah, I can't imagine what I would do.
Well, they're probably all doing what you're doing right now. They're probably just teaching, you know, to, you know.
Yeah, probably. whichever ones can. I know there's a lot of players that aren't really into that sort of thing or don't really feel comfortable teaching a private lesson either.
Or they can't, you know. They
can't.
I mean,
they don't have the tech to do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have to have knowledge. You gotta have some decent knowledge, and you gotta know how to teach someone. You can't just be like, okay, here's this riff, blah blah blah. You know, you really there's you.
Don't get me wrong. There are lots of teachers out there that teach that way. It's a big part of the reason I do my own thing now, because that was a lot of what I used to work with, and it was just agony to dude, you've been taking lessons for like 3 years. How do you not know where A is? Like, it's open strings on the guitar. Like, what do you guys do in your lessons? Oh, you know, he just kind of like shows like a riff or whatever, and just kind of, and then I just watch, and then I go home. It's like, oh,
yeah, that ain't the way. But a lot of people don't. Yeah, a lot of people don't know how to teach. I mean, I got thrown into it by Johnny Murata when I was 19. I'm like, I better figure out how to do this, you know?
Hey, the same thing happened to me. I got a call. I still remember the phone call. So I get a call from Johnny Murata, and I'm like, hello? And like, hey, Dan, it's Johnny Murata. You want to teach kids? I'm like, wait, what?
Tomorrow?
That's pretty much like the next week. I wasn't even driving yet. I had to have my mom drop me off to teach like 2 days a week.
Wow.
When I first started, I was really early, but I was like,
well, you had a little uphill battle, but I'm thinking that you probably are grateful that you took that phone call.
Oh, I totally am. It started me down that path, and now I have that story to talk like with my kids. Like, I got to teach at such a young age, and like I immediately fell in love with it, and I had a passion for it, and like right away, because I was brought up on a particular piano method, but all my kids when I first started teaching were on a different method, so I was learning as I was teaching.
Look at these people that are at the top. Like, I always say this when people argue about, like, who's the better drummer or whatever. Mm-hmm. When you get to a certain level, there isn't a better drummer. It's who you prefer. Like, you look at, you know, Steve Gadd and Neil Peart and Mark Zonder or Portnoy. It's preference.
You can't really say one's better than the other. You're absolutely
right, because it's preference. When you get to that level, there's no better than each other. It's just it's that level. It's that pinnacle, you know. I always, like, there used to be people when I was in college would argue, you know, who's better musician, who's better this, who's better that. Well, it's all personal choice when you get to that level, you know. And who's better than who? That's high school stuff, you know.
Depends on what you like. You can say Portnoy is better than Pert because he plays faster. He could play different, more complex rhythmic patterns at a certain BPM that Pert can't. But you could flip that whole thing around and say, well, Pert's a better drummer because he plays better in the pocket and he's a better writer.
Right.
You know, it's like neither is the correct answer. They're both good in their own ways.
Right. Because if you sat any one of those drummers that we mentioned down with a certain piece of music, they could all play it, but they'd all play it with their own kind of style to it.
Right.
So
you get to the point where you're comparing an apple to an orange.
Anything musician to musician at that level, they're all excellent apples. They're your favorite apple.
Yeah.
Whatever your favorite apple
is.
Nice
big chart of like all the different kinds of apples, the Granny Smith and the Macintosh and like
right.
They're all apples.
Exactly.
They're
all right. There you go. They're
all
the perfect way.
Diet, but you know, you can't say a Granny Smith is better than a Mac.
Right.
You know, it's a matter of taste. The Granny Smith is a little more dry, a little more sour.
That's perfect.
And if you're into it,
so that's going to be my new one. Not apples and oranges. It's going to be apples and apples and apples.
Right. So you gotta get a good sense of lots of different kinds of apples so you can create different examples.